Hi, my name is John Kaplinger, and I'm a QA analyst here at Livefront. Welcome to part 5 of my 5-part series where I'm talking about accessibility testing for native apps. Today we'll be talking about testing for users with limited mobility. Be sure to check out part 1 of this 5-part series where I talk about what accessibility testing is and why it's important. Let's get into it. Limited mobility testing. What is it? Who uses it? What should I test? And I'll give you some tips and tricks as well as some gotchas I've learned along the way. So what is limited mobility? Well, limited mobility is a term for users who have physical impairments that limit their mobility. This includes users who are missing appendages or are temporarily impaired, may have arthritis or something like that. One other thing for limited mobility users is that they may have to enable multiple accessibility tools. So who are limited mobility users? Well, there's users who are either missing limbs or could possibly be paralyzed. Some of these users are ones with central neural system issues, like Parkinson's disease, or users who are temporarily injured and do not have the use of their dominant hand. What are some things I should test for limited mobility users? Well, first of all, how accurate do I have to be when engaging an element? Is the touch target size large enough for me to press? How easily can I navigate in between different features? Do I have to use both hands in order to control a map, or can I use one? How much time is given for those time-sensitive actions? Do I have enough time to complete them? Some things you should consider when testing, when making sure that an element is easily engageable, is making sure that elements with like small icons can still be tapped. Is it difficult to focus on individual elements if they're positioned closely to other ones? Like, do you have to get really finite on where you're touching that one? And then are there specific controls that you need to use that are gestures that are hard to do if you're someone with arthritis? What are some things to consider when testing how easy it is to navigate an app with one or both hands? Well, making sure that, like I said before, maps, that you can actually still navigate them using one hand. There's a cool tool where double tapping with one finger will actually zoom in, zoom out. On Android devices, there's actually a mode for one-handed mode. And so it shortens the screen so that it's only half of it. And along that, like making sure that devices that have really large displays are still easy to reach all the controls. I'm not having to stretch all the way to the top and to the bottom, and kind of making those controls easier for everyone to reach. So what are some things that you should consider when testing for time-sensitive actions? You want to make sure that when filling out a form that requires maybe an authorization code, that you give enough time to enter that code before it's expired. Making sure that if there's a series of steps to go through in a time-sensitive process, that you can complete all those steps before it totally cancels you out. And then if there's time-specific prompts that appear that are giving you a certain amount of time to engage, that user has enough time to engage it. So what are some tips that I've learned when testing limited mobility? Well, like I said, on Android devices, you can actually enable one-handed mode, which will give you that feature for testing. You can also learn and enable the device's gesture shortcuts so that you don't have to actually use two hands, you can use one hand. And also, you should test as if you have the impairment. Literally, use your non-dominant hand or pretend you only got a pinky. Do something like that. Tricks? One good one is test with a shaky hand. Try to touch buttons if you can't hold your device real still. That's kind of hard to do. Testing it with your non-dominant hand, and then testing to see if like voice control is supported. Some gotchas. Well, it is important to consider users with no mobility when testing an app. So how could you do this if you didn't have any arms? Test the scenario where a user needs limited mobility support as well as maybe vision impairment support or audio impairment support. Also, making sure that elements with precise controls are tested for ease of use for those with like muscular impairments like Parkinson's. So along with great accessibility testing comes great bug reporting. One thing you should always make sure you include is a video or a screenshot of your test, making sure that you describe what the expectations are, also including an impact of the issue that you ran into. If it's major, affects the functional use of the app and you can no longer press something because the touch target is too small. And then just including any WCAG guidelines that are relevant to the issue. Congratulations, you now know the basics of testing the app for someone who has limited mobility. What we learned? Well, making sure that users can engage all the elements, especially the small ones. Making sure that elements can be navigated to with single-handed gestures. And making sure that time-sensitive features like errors or password prompts give enough time for the user to complete the action. So go out there and use this knowledge to improve 100% of users' digital experiences. And thanks again for tuning in to part 5 of my 5-part series on limited mobility testing. If you missed any, be sure to check out my other talks, where I talk about testing for voiceover and talkback, dynamic type and font size testing, keyboard navigation, and testing while the device is in landscape mode.